Hello everyone and welcome to the den. Thank you for watching. If you saw the title, then you know today I am going to be, actually tomorrow, I'm going to be canning chili beans. So I'm going to walk you through the first steps of canning any type of beans. I don't think that I have put that step in my other videos just because it happens on the day before. So I'm going to show you what I do and how I get my beans prepared and soaking, and then tomorrow we'll can some beans. Okay, so the first thing is you're going to choose what beans that you want in your chili. This is open to whatever you like. It doesn't have to be what I choose. You can do a mixture of whatever your favorite beans are that you put in your chili. It could be, you know, kidney beans, black beans, pinto beans, a combination of all. Any of those would be fine, whatever you like. It's open to you. Beans all can the same for the most part. So what I choose to can is I have 3 of the 1 pound packages of the light red kidney beans. And then I have this big 12 pound bag of dried pinto beans from Sam's Club. I am going to start off by getting these into a 2 pound amount, and I'll be right back. Okay, so I have my beans in the sink here, and all I'm gonna do is I'm gonna rinse them. Let me pull my sleeve up. And I'm looking for any stones or beans that look gross, and rinsing them. So you're just gonna move them around, get the field dust off of them. And then once you've kind of looked around in there, you can give them a good rinse. Okay, so that's my 2 pounds of pinto beans, and now I'm gonna move on to my kidneys. Okay, so now I have a Cambro here, and this is a 6-quart Cambro, or 6 liters, pretty similar, or pretty close, I should say. And I am going to put my beans into my Cambro. Okay, so now I have 3 pounds of kidney beans in here, and I'm going to do the same exact thing to these that I just did to my pinto beans. Yikes! So that's it. You just put the water in there with the beans. Make sure that those beans have plenty of space to swell up. They're going to get, I think I showed in one of my videos, possibly canning the black beans or canning Great Northern beans, just how much they swell. And they swell up a lot. It's at least double, if not 3 times the size of a dry bean. So those beans are going to get pretty big, and all you have to do is just set them on your counter. I keep them covered because my cat will play in the water, and that's disgusting. So I keep my beans covered and I just set them on the counter and let them do their thing. As long as you don't have them in the water for more than like a day, it's fine to set them on the counter. I wouldn't recommend soaking your beans any longer than that. They can go into like a ferment stage, and you don't want that. So if you're going to be canning beans and you know you're gonna pre-soak them, and make sure it's within a time frame where you know you're gonna can those within a day or so. Okay, so they'll do most of their swelling probably before the night's end. That's all that is going to happen today, and I'm going to finish canning this tomorrow. Canning chili beans can be done in a lot of different ways, but for me, I follow how I would make chili. So that's what I want my chili beans to taste like, how I make my chili. So the spices and things we'll go over tomorrow, but for today, that's all I'm doing, just soaking up my beans. And it is a kind of a 2-day process, but today's process is super easy. So I have a new series coming up, and I hope that you guys will subscribe and stay tuned for it. I'm going to try to help people also build their pantries, and give them some insight on how I build mine. and how I do it with a large family, and it would pertain to anyone with any size family. So if you're interested in my content, I just want to ask that you subscribe and give my video a like, and if you have comments, I'd love to hear from you. So until tomorrow, I'm gonna go do some mopping, some laundry, pick up kids, gotta work tonight. Busy day, so I'll see you tomorrow. Okay, it's been about 24 hours, not exactly 24 hours, but this is what our beans look like now, and here's my other one. So it got pretty full, almost doubled up, at least doubled up. So I have this sink right here, I have my jars soaking in hot soapy water. I'm gonna finish cleaning all of them. I'm gonna clean 20 because that's what I hope to get out of my chili beans today, and then I'm going to bring you to the rinse cycle of the beans. So let me get these jars all washed up. I'll be right back. Okay, so I got all my jars cleaned up. They're just gonna sit over there until I'm ready for them. All you need to do when you're pressure canning, and most canning, even some boiling water canning, you just gotta get your jars clean, and you can clean them in hot soapy water. You don't have to boil them. You don't have to do any of that. Same with the lids and rings. I just put them all on the sink, let them soak, and then rinse them. If they're old jars that you're reusing, make sure they don't have any food debris. So a couple of those were jars that had black beans that I had canned in them previously, but most of them were new. So new jars are easy, just soak them and then rinse them out. But that's all the jars I have, so I'm gonna have to buy some more because I don't have any more pint jars, and that's what I liked to can in, is pint jars. But right now, what I'm gonna do, like I said, just hot soapy water and then let them dry on a towel until you're ready for them. They're sitting out over there, and now we're gonna move on to rinse our beans. You don't wanna keep that bean soak water, you don't wanna use that. So let's get our beans rinsed and then we'll move on. Okay, so I'm just gonna grab my beans here. Let's start with the small one. And I'm just gonna dump it all in there. And you can see, I don't know if you can see that or not, but the water is like a brownish, takes the color of the bean. Just wanna get rid of all that. And then rinse them really good. And they smell, I don't know, they have this like kind of weird smell. You just rinse them really good. I use cold water. It's a little powerful. And just move them around, make sure all of them get rinsed. And you're gonna do the same with both, well, however many beans you have. You see that color in there, it's like a brownish red. I have to do two separate ones. So. Okay, so now our beans are soaked, that part's done, and they're all rinsed and ready to be put in our pot. But first, before we add our beans, we're gonna get the water that the beans are gonna go in, we're gonna get it tasting good. So I have a 20-quart stock pot that we're gonna put this stuff in, and we're gonna add some spices like chili powder, onion powder, garlic powder, and I'm gonna put chicken broth in there so that it's a very flavorful broth, if you will, that these chili beans are going to go in. And we're gonna start by getting our stock pot going. So we're gonna need to get it to like the 10-quart level, which would be about halfway up the stock pot, because 10 quarts would be the equivalent to 20 pints. So that's what I'm gonna do right now, and I'll show you how to do that. Okay, so in my pot here, I have 6 quarts of water. And if you're gonna use your like home canned broth or cans of broth, I would cut it half and half. I'm gonna put in enough to make about half of the broth. So that's gonna be about 10 teaspoons And I'm using beef broth today. You can use chicken broth too. Normally I would use chicken broth, but that's what I had, so it'll be fine. And I'm gonna wait for that to dissolve, and then we'll add the rest of the spices, and then we'll add the beans once that comes to a boil. Okay, so I added about 2 teaspoons of cumin. That's all I had in my little jar. You can omit that. It's something that, you know, not everyone likes, but I like it, so I use it. So now I'm gonna add some chili powder. I'm gonna do about 2 tablespoons. I'm gonna start with that. And this is a recipe that I always just kind of go along and taste until I get it right. That's how I make my chili. I just add until it tastes good. And I'm not adding any salt to this because when I cook the chili, I'll be adding extra spices to it, and I do not want it to be too salty. So there's gonna be no salt. And that's why I also cut the broth in half, because broth is salty. So this is granulated onion. You could use fresh onion in this too if you wanted to. I'm gonna start with a tablespoon of that and a tablespoon of garlic. We may need more. But again, when I go to cook the meat for this, I will be adding spices too. So you don't want this to be overly spicy, but you want it to taste similar to what your chili would taste like. All right, so I'm going to stir this around, give it a taste test, and see if I need to add anything else. Okay, so I'm gonna let this come up to a boil, and once it comes up to a boil, we'll add the beans. I'm good with the flavor profile of this. What you're looking for as you're tasting this broth is the chili flavor. As long as you think that that's enough of a chili flavor for your chili beans, then go with that. If you want to do it just like this, it's 1 tablespoon of garlic powder, 1 tablespoon of onion. I did about 10 teaspoons of beef bouillon to my 12 quarts, and I did 2 tablespoons of chili powder and about 2 teaspoons of cumin. You could add more cumin if you like cumin. I would probably have done half a tablespoon. Well, I mean, I did 2 teaspoons, so that's probably sufficient. Cumin can be really overpowering. This is good for now. I'm gonna let it come to a boil, and then when we go to add the beans, I'll bring you back. So my pot has come to a boil, so now we're gonna add in our beans. Be very careful. Alright, so we are more than halfway up the pot level here. It's slightly over, I'd say. Maybe, it's gonna be close. So I'm definitely gonna get my 20 pints, at least I think so. So you can see in there that there is water over covering the beans, so that's what you want, because you're gonna use this liquid in the canning jars, right? So my bean level is probably, I don't know, an inch or so down there. We're gonna let them do their thing in here. Once it comes back to a boil, then I'll start my timer, and I let them go. I usually do my beans for 20 minutes. You'll see some people do for 30, but I think 20 minutes is enough. And like all the beans that I can, they're plenty soft enough when they come out of the pressure canner. So waiting for this to come to a boil, and then when it does, I'm gonna set my timer for 20 minutes. We're almost at a boil now. A lot of the air is escaping because this liquid is hot. So that's all we're doing now, and then I'll bring you back after the 20 minutes is up. Okay, so while I'm waiting for my beans to come to a boil, I thought that I would share with you guys the recipes that you could use in lieu of this recipe. Now, a lot of people want to follow a recipe, and I understand that completely. But this guide from the USDA does have a chili con carne recipe if you wanted to actually can actual chili, and that would be with meat and tomatoes, anything that you would put in your chili. And also this one too, if you don't have that book, but maybe you have this book, this one also has a chili recipe in it. It's on page 105. The USDA books is on 5-8. But the best thing for you to do would be to follow a bean recipe. I think some people kind of will get a little nervous about adding spices because they're like, oh, I don't know, that's not on the recipe. But if what I do as a canner is I will make sure that any ingredient that I put into my recipe is in other recipes for canning. So you're okay to add the spices. You want to make this taste how you want them to taste. Like if you don't like something, you know, that you see in a canning recipe, you can leave it out. You know, you don't have to be bound to that recipe. You just have to be safe about what you're canning. Like my white chili, there's a recipe for it somewhere and I cannot find it. But I know that everything that goes into those jars you can safely can it, okay? So that's what I do when I make recipes, because a lot of the times the recipes in here, I'm like, gross, I'm not doing that. So I alter it to how I would want it to taste. So that's exactly what I've done with these beans today, because that's what I want them to taste like. You know, that flavor profile, so that I can work with that to make it my personal chili when I'm ready to make dinner. So I just wanted to share that with you. You know, basically all I'm doing on this one is following how to can beans. And the biggest thing for that is make sure that I'm canning it and processing it for 75 minutes. So these babies still haven't come to a boil yet, but we are almost there. So I will see you in a few. The 20 minutes is up on the beans boiling. So I'm gonna bring them over here and we're gonna start loading up our jars. Okay, so the only thing that you need now is your pot and your cleaned jars over here and a ladle and a funnel. Then you're just gonna wanna take your jar and fill them up. So the trick with filling up the beans is you just wanna go to this line here where it starts to have a curve towards the lid. Fill to there. You just wanna put your funnel in there. And right now I'm just trying to get beans, not too much juice. And it smells really good, like chili already. You can see here how I kind of have it like at the neckline. This may even be a little bit more than should be in there, but to this about right here. And then when we add our liquid, we'll fill to the 1-inch Headspace line. And I'm just gonna continue filling all of my jars, and then I'll come back and do my liquid line. Okay, so I have all my jars filled with my beans, and now it's time to do my Headspace fill with my broth here. Hopefully we have enough. I think we'll be okay. And I also grabbed my, because we're gonna debubble, so this is my debubbler, and it also has the little measuring thing on the end, the little teeth. I pretty much know what a 1-inch Headspace is, but I'll show you guys how to use it, okay? So I'm just gonna ladle out your liquid here. This liquid is dark because it takes the color of the spices and the beans. So I'm going to continue to do this, and then I'll bring you back to show you how to debubble and check your Headspace. Okay, so the first process that you want to do with your jars before you check Headspace is you want to debubble. Just making sure that my liquid, that I'm all debubbled here, and then at the end of this thing, it has these little teeth, and on the teeth it says 1-inch, 3/4, 1/2, and 1/4 for each little tooth. So you just set the little tooth, whichever one you want to do. So I'm doing the 1-inch one. I just set that on the rim, and as you can see, let me get you closer here, into there, you want the tip of this to be at the liquid level, and that gives you your 1-inch Headspace. And I'm touching, so we're good. And then you can kind of just tell, you know, by, well, that one is a 1-inch Headspace, so you kind of have an eyeball to know what, if you know, if you're closer, if you're gonna have to add more liquid. So I'm gonna go ahead and debubble the rest of my 20 pints, and I will be right back. Alright, so next step in the game is you want to clean your rims off really good, and I'm going to use vinegar. You could use, we don't have any fat content in this, but I'm going to use vinegar because the liquid is kind of like sticky on my hands a little bit. At the same time that you're doing this, just ensure that there's no cracks. Well, really you should, when you're washing them, make sure there's no cracks, but sometimes I forget to do that. So right now I'm just going to also make sure that there's no cracks, nicks, or any imperfections in the rims of these jars, these new jars, because that can prevent the lid from sealing properly, and you don't want that to happen. All right, so now I'm just going to put lids on them and your bands. And then just your bands next. I have all my lids and bands on now, and you're just going to tighten up your bands before you put them in the canner, and it's finger tight, and that's it. Just use your hand, your fingers, and tighten them up. Okay, so that part's done. So now all we're going to do is get these loaded up in the canner. I have my canner on low heat right now, so I want, you know, these are hot now, these are warm to the touch, so you want your water to be, you know, warm too. That way that these jars don't go into any type of shock with a cold water. So let's get these loaded up. This is my canner, and it is a 23 quart Presto. It's warm to the touch right now because, like I said, it is on, and this down here, it's hot in here. So if you want to use a jar lifter to put your jars in there, by all means do that. So these are regular mouth pints. So I can get 20 in there, so I'm going to do 10 on each layer. Okay, let me get my spacer. You don't have to have one of those. You can stagger your jars if you don't have one. Alright, so that is a full canner. And they are kind of, they're close to each other. But that's my capacity limit for this. So now I'm going to turn this heat up to medium. I've already made sure that I can see through my hole. You want to make sure you can see through the vent pipe. Also, just look over your canner, make sure that everything looks good. Your gasket looks good here. And you line it up arrow to arrow. So arrow here, you'll see the arrow on your little, see it there? And then you have an arrow on this style of canner on the lid. You just line them up and nest it on, okay? So now what we're doing is we're waiting for this to build pressure. The first step in the canning process is waiting for it to vent, and this is your vent pipe. So you're gonna be waiting for a steady vent. You will start to see steam kind of coming out little by little, but you really want a full steady vent because that is what you're looking for. You want to replace the air that's inside your canner with steam. When this gets to a full vent, I will show you what it looks like. It will spit steam for a little bit, and then it will start to kind of steadily just come out. And after it's done spitting for a while, and it starts to do this, you want to set your timer for 10 minutes, let that fully vent out, and then we will go on to the next step in the process. Okay, so the 10-minute vent cycle has expired. So now I'm going to put on my weight. And that weight is going to start the pressure to build. Okay, so for my elevation I need to be at 13, and right now we're sitting at about 14. And I will keep this about 15-ish. It's okay to go over the point where you need to be, just don't let it go under. If for some reason it goes under, then you're gonna have to start your timer all over again once it gets back up to the pressure you're supposed to be at. So I'm supposed to be at 13. It almost always hovers about the 15 mark. This is a 15-pound weight for this canner. There's no other options. That's what it comes with. So this won't rock for me until it gets to 15 or higher. So that's how you know that you need to adjust your heat some, is when you hear that rocking on this pressure canner. Your canner may be different, so just make sure that you know how to use your canner and read the instruction manual and all that. But if you have a 23-quart Presto, then this is how you would use it. And so, like I said, I'm just gonna watch it right now because it could continue to climb some and I may have to turn it down a little bit. And that's just fine, just do not let it go underneath. For me, I'm not gonna let it go underneath 13 pounds of pressure for my elevation. So once this has, my timer's already set, I've already set my timer. So once the timer runs out, then the only thing that you're gonna do at that point is just turn the heat off and walk away. So get it to the pressure point that you need to be at, set your timer, watch your pressures and your heat, and wait for that timer to run out. And when it does, like I said, just turn the heat off and walk away. Okay, so my pressure has dropped all the way to 0 and this little valve has fallen down. So now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take this off and make sure no more steam comes out. And we're good there, and just set that aside. Now you can remove your lid now because your pressure, like I said, is at 0. You don't have any steam coming out, so it's safe to remove this. And it's hot, so if you take this off, like, you know, it's been about 5 or 10 minutes since this thing fell down, this valve thing. It's okay to take the lid off, but like I said, it will be very hot. If you waited a while longer, then it wouldn't be as hot, obviously. But there's going to be quite a bit of steam that comes out. And if you've watched any of my other canning videos, you know that my microwave gets in the way, so I just have to do this fast. So you can see them bubbling and steam is still kind of hissing out of them. So I'm going to let these sit in here for about 5 or 10 minutes or so, and then I'll take them out. But you can see that nice color in there from that look like chili beans you'd get at the store. You got a little steam coming on there. So as soon as I go to take these out, I will bring you back. Okay, so they've been in here for, I don't know, 10 minutes or so after I've taken the lid off. So I'm just gonna pull one out, let you see. Just don't tip your jars if you can help it. And that's what they look like. They look really good. They look like chili beans you'd buy from the store, and you can see that, you see how the processing does make them split, and it makes them really soft. So, and they grew some. You can see at the top it's gone over my Headspace level, but they look good. So I'm going to take all these out and I'm going to place them on a towel, and I'll let them sit there all night, and then tomorrow morning I'll remove the rings and I'll wash them. They look pretty clean, but I'll give them a wash anyways, and then I'll put them away. I'll date them and put them away, and that's it. Okay, so that's gonna do it for me today, guys. If you enjoyed this video and this type of content, then I hope that you think about subscribing and hitting the notification button and selecting all so that you know when all of my videos come out. So I will see you in the next canning video. Bye!